Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready to play well here. Today we're talking about the brand new map, Mines Entrance 2 for the Guild Wars. Today is going to be kind of a high-level preview of what to expect from the map overall. On the screen, what you're seeing on the right side here is kind of the screenshot image of what they've given us. For orientation's sake, I have a red line and a green line here if you wanted to try to match it up to the bird's eye view here on the left. Couple things to talk about here. Number one, just an overall map layout. So relatively flat map overall, where if you're looking at majority of the space here where your character start, it's height of 1, and then it kind of goes to this height of 3 in the middle, where I'm going to call this a battle arena, if you will. That's really it in terms of height variability, so nothing too crazy in terms of the topography. There are some areas of the map which are off limits. The first two are essentially these blackened areas here, which are the cavernous areas that you're seeing in the picture, where I'm sure you probably can shoot through them or do abilities through them if you don't require a line of sight. But based on the way the center of the map is oriented, I would imagine most people tend to congregate here, that you're not going to get many instances where anyone would ever attack you across that space. So for all intents and purposes, those parts of the maps are not accessible. The other things to note is that there are two boxes here, which are the boxes that you're seeing on the map here. They are non-traversables. You cannot go over them. You can attack through them, I would imagine, again, if you don't require line of sight on your abilities, but in terms of pathing for the character that starts in that slot 3, they're going to have to go around it one way or the other. They can't go right over it. What that means is, and you can see this in slot 2 as well, there's a pretty big height limitation here, where I almost want to call this little box here the sniper's perch, because I do think there's some opportunity there for characters to potentially walk up there and then just sort of shoot across the map. So obviously a niche scenario to some degree, but the bottom line regardless is that the limitations of the height here, where you go from height 0 to height 3, means the majority of the cast of characters cannot go straight over it. So like slot 3, slot 2 is also going to have to go around to some degree. Slot 1 kind of can go straight ahead, but they do have the stagger of the person across from them, where they're not directly across, they're a couple squares below. All in all, what you need to know about that means that you really can't get baited into attacking on one turn like some of these smaller maps, because everyone is essentially forced to sort of stagger their pathing. You will have at least one turn to buff your teammates or buff yourself or do whatever you want to do, prepare for the team fight that's going to happen in the middle of the map here, which if we're talking about the funneling of this, overall not a lot of hard funneling. There is a directional push obviously toward the middle of the map, but this platform here has 3 entrance points that really anybody with a jump of 1 can access. So in terms of a hard funnel, there really isn't one. You can really put a tank in any one of these slots and they'll just easily get to the middle of the platform from any of the 3 slots. So nothing too concerning there in terms of how you might get pulled into one side of the map or the other. The interesting thing here in terms of turn 1 options, because it is a lot of flat land and all these characters are spaced out 3 spaces away, it means almost all teammate buffs in the game should be applicable here, whereas some other maps don't have exactly the flat land here, so some buffs don't work. Some maps that we've had previously, they were 4 slots away, so characters don't have enough move to get across to the teammate, but that is not the case here. You certainly could have teammates move toward the middle here to buff slot 2, or likewise really any direction. But that's a really important thing, that you have the option to either decide to turtle up and get some buffs off and you know, delay the fight, or you can walk straight ahead as well. I think that's a valuable option for something like the Earthcaster that has a lot of mobility. If we're getting into the middle part in particular, I think there's going to be a lot of chaos here, where obviously your first 2 turns are going to determine everything that happens here. A lot of characters do have abilities that have height too, so there is no barrier per se for them using large AoEs across areas in the middle here. That's something to watch out for. And then because tanks can technically come at any angle, there's going to be some element of chaos here depending on who's in range, who's not in range, things of that nature. So I think the first 2 turns are going to be positively, monumentally important here. They are in every single map, but I think there's going to be a lot of chaos in the middle of the map here that you don't typically expect on the others. In terms of what I think for strongest elements, I do think light is by far the best one still. I don't think there's any debating the power creep, what they have for vision cards, what they have for abilities, the amount of sustain with Elena and Engelbert's courage, and just their resistance and evasiveness and things of that nature. Jaden's obviously one of the best ranged users, ranged characters in the game as well, so for a map like this where missile users and range definitely is an advantage, he obviously has a leg up over most of the other characters. In terms of the other elements, I do think wind and lightning have opportunities to shine here. I do think June, because of her addition to the game, what she does as a tank, but also because the wind buff is on this map for wind attack up. I do think Little Leela and Varouche and Tifa and 2B do have opportunities here to potentially shine now that June has been released. I also think Lightning has an opportunity with Ibarra's release where, yes, you can still utilize some of the missile that the Lightning brings between Cloud or potentially Frederica, but Ibarra also has a lot of large AoEs, kind of like Black Rose Elena does that. When it comes to this middle platform, large spams of magic are going to do something. So Lightning is still a valuable option as well, particularly because I think Charlotte is an absolutely fantastic tank to go against the light meta that you'll probably see in the top 25 of the game. After that, I do think there's kind of a drop off. I do think Dark and Earth can work here. The problem with Darkcast overall is that you require a much smaller map for them to truly shine. That being said, Black Rose Elena is the kind of character that will positively thrive on this map because if Dwayne gets out ahead of her, she will being further back, use some of her curative spells on him, which you don't always get on smaller maps, but longer maps you certainly can. And then obviously this middle portion here, Black Rose Elena has a lot of abilities that can absolutely devastate teams there. So I think it's viable, but Dwayne only having the 5 hate and not being able to regenerate it is certainly a demerit. And then Venera, still a great character, but because people are hedging for Slash and Missile a lot, she has kind of been taken down a peg. That being said, Prompto and his Dispel and his status elements certainly is a viable option to some degree as well, considering it's a longer map and he's a missile user. Anyways, the Earthcast 2, not the best map for them. They really do shine in maps where they can easily traverse places that other characters can't in order to create advantageous 1v1 scenarios where they can use either their bulk or their evasiveness or Drain Force or who knows what to essentially get the job done. That being said, on a map like this, Ketone's Drain Force is definitely a viable option. Relatively flat map that she has plenty of opportunities to get in position to use it. I just think that because the map sort of lends itself to this middle funnel here, you're not going to get a lot of those 1v1 matchups that you'd like. I would imagine most Earth units would end up attacking the tank, who would be in range relatively quickly. And then finally, Fire, Ice, and Water are all the, dare I say, last three. I don't think they're ones that you're going to see primarily, but certainly viable to some degree. Fire does a great job turtling as a comp, so this is certainly a map where you can have people turtle up and then slowly move forward. If you want to use Berserk Mont, I think that's always a great strategy as well. And then Ice and Water, not bad, but I just haven't seen them as competitive as the other elements yet in terms of what their vision cards and characters bring. So that's the map in a nutshell. I think there's a lot of opportunities for a lot of different elements to shine here and a lot of strategies to be utilized as well, where I don't think there's one best turn rotation, one best tank slot. I think there's a lot of curveballs you can throw at people. But that's the map overall. Hopefully this is insightful. Good luck testing today, and I'll talk to you all soon.